we'll get going. Thank you so much for coming into this webinar. Special thanks to the frequent flyers who've made it to the end, have been to all five, and a special welcome also if this is the first time that you've come along. So those of you will know that the recipe really is about 20 minutes of me doing chat, and then 10 minutes for Q&A. On occasion, I've kind of run over my 20 minutes, so apologies if that happens again today. It's quite racy. The whole point of this webinar is that you are very busy, and I want to be able to give you some insights and takeaways so you can play with this back in the workplace. So literally is a fast hop across a model that we use for team effectiveness. And we use the same introductory slides with no apology. The key points are teams are complex adaptive systems. They're not a two-dimensional model. Models are not reality. They give you a window into, if you like, a messy teenager's room, which is what the team dynamics is. And that's maybe a metaphor that's worth hanging on to for those of you who've got teenage children. The other key point we wanted people to take away is that a poor team system stores up stressors which impact the way people behave. Sometimes we get called in to help a team leader organization to fix their people, when actually a systems view actually will show up a whole bunch of stuff that needs to be addressed first before we looking at the people element. And this is the whole idea here, is that the environment that we operate into is one of the major influences around how we behave. And this statement here is one that's worth sticking on to, and then the idea of the messiness. And I've used this before, so that there's me, there's us, and of course the attention often goes to me and us in the relationship, but actually we're part of this thing, it, which is the team, the wider organization, and of course the wider context. And all of that is shifting on a minute-by-minute basis. So it really is a complex space that teams have to navigate. So that's the sort of preamble. What we've done over the last four webinars, this being the fifth, is we've looked at this model of team effectiveness. And the first element we looked at was situation, so the external context, now, next, and obviously into the future. Again, this idea of things changing. We then looked at the foundations of team effectiveness, and here are some of the headings that we considered. And already you begin to feel that actually there's quite a lot of items in this inventory of things that you want to pay attention to. We then looked at team aspirations. So this was the idea about what kind of team do we need to become to best serve the stakeholders that have actually commissioned us in the first place. And we talked about the hub and spoke team, which is where the all-power chairperson commands a lot of one-to-one conversations rather than a sort of team type of dialogue. So there's a big thing around, are you a real team or are you just a meeting? And we discussed that then. And then we looked at operations, which is the bit that we all experience on a day-to-day basis. This is the mess or the interactions that we have in the meeting room. And we looked at behaviors, ways of working, and looked at things like membership. And actually, some teams have more people than they actually need to make the sort of decisions that team needs to make. And that's a big area that's worth everyone's attention. And today, we are going to look at integrations. And this is the idea that actually a team doesn't stand on its own. It's part of a wider enterprise of teams or value chains. We'll talk about that in a minute. And collectively, that's the ecosystem of teams, are delivering value, however you define that in terms of whichever context or organization that you are in. So I'm just going to go through some models now, just to spark some thinking about how you work with other teams in your organization. So these are the headings we're going to go through today. Value chains, an old model, but really useful. Team of teams, Stanley McChrystal, American General. Cross-silo leadership, all with similar themes, which we'll go through. And then we'll talk about enterprise projects and the agreements and issues that you might want to consider when you are trying to join all your teams together. So this is I think, a 1985 model by Porter. And he created this idea that actually there's a value chain. And the model he used here was, I think, a manufacturing business. But actually, this is applicable really across most organizations. The idea that we create these functions, we create these silos, and actually to work effectively, we need to have some sort of integration across those teams or functions or departments, some sort of a handoff process, and to make that process as efficient as possible to increase the size of the margin or benefit, again, depending on your organization. And all these support activities like HR, technology, procurement are a super important part of that glue. So this is the idea of an end-to-end value chain, and it's a useful thing just to remind you that how do we interlock in the most efficient way? Stanley McChrystal, American general in Iraq, realized that in order to integrate with the local population and outfox, as it were, the opposition who were moving faster and being more successful, the old rules of military organization had to change. So we're going to go through some of the insights that he came out here. And do get a hold of that book. It's not all about being military stuff. It has wide applicability. So he came up with the idea that instead of having all these vertical hierarchies, it's all about networks, not hierarchies. It's about the lateral connections between functions. What he called a shared consciousness. This was about constant communication, up, down, left, right, in, outside. It was almost, I think he used the word over-communicate, so that everyone had shared awareness of the situation, and that there was none of this sort of a power and control that you get in some organizations where people withhold information almost as a negotiation tactic between powerful silos. So this is about over communicating and making sure people have shared awareness. And the next one was about empowered execution, which was move the decisions to take action as far away from the top as possible. And this was all based on trust, obviously, and training and a common language. But it's about decentralizing decision making and not having to escalate decisions so far up the chain that actually you lose time and you lose impact. Small teams. His idea is that if you have teams of between 5 and 9, that's pretty much optimum. The minute you start getting teams that are bigger than that, the amount of conversations you have to reach a decision or just explore an issue, the time explodes. So this was about identifying who really needs to be in the team and what sort of decisions are appropriate at that level of team. I think I mentioned the last time we've been working with a team of 14 to 16 strong. And that is a real challenge in terms of agile decision making and just the dynamics of everyone having relationships that actually allow them to have those kind of conversations. He also talked about trust rather than control, and that coordination was achieved via having a very clearly articulated shared purpose. So that rather than chasing people up on daily meetings to see, have you done this or have you not done this? This was about delegating decisions and having trust, so that the trust and the common purpose became the items that delivered effect. And we can perhaps talk about that later on. And this was a really interesting one, leaders as gardeners. He articulated in a way that actually has been around the military for a long time, is that the military managers or managers or leaders in any context are there to create the conditions for success rather than barking orders or instructions or going down too many levels in the organization. And he came up with the metaphor of a gardener. And the gardener not only creates the conditions for success and is in the business of growing, he or she is equally in the business of weeding and cutting out waste. So this isn't about a softly, cuddly approach to success. This is about being very clear about who do we need, Who do we not need? How does that structure change over time? So the gardener was a very powerful metaphor. And Nick, I don't know, perhaps you'll be able to talk to that in the Q&A, having been in that theatre. And finally, again, no surprise to anybody, continuous adaptation. The minute you do something, some sort of after action review, do we need to do it again differently the next time? Do we need to do it at all? What new things do we bring in? So it's about continuous learning and continuously being aware of the impact you have in your business or in the environment that you're trying to affect. This was a paper from Amy Edmondson, who you probably know from the work on psychological safety. And the point here is really about horizontal interconnecting between teams and how going forward, and you probably are already on top of this within your organization, is that the leaders, the executives or leaders at any level, one of the key roles is how do they manage the interfaces between their teams or their departments or their functions. No longer is it about having a nice team environment and doing good things within the team. It's actually how do we manage across the boundaries? How do we create effect? How do we change outcomes by operating outside of our sort of boundaries or what we've been told to do? And she came up with a number of aspects here, which was actually it's horizontal teamwork, which we've covered already. She identified people called bridges, and they're the people who act as go-between. And one of the things that she's introduced, which perhaps other models haven't introduced, is actually it's not always about the team leader going out and doing this stuff. It's about identifying the people in your team who are natural connectors, who are natural entrepreneurs or intrapreneurs, who are at their best when they're going out and meeting people and bringing that knowledge into the business. And another sort of person that she's identified are the adhesives. And these are about the team members who say, right, we've got this connection, let's bring people together, let's have a workshop, let's have a community of interest, let's bring people together and let's do this, this sharing, this learning, and actually make use of these external connections. So bridges and adhesives. And she brought the idea, which I'm really passionate about, which is about inquiry and dialogue skills. And this is about the power of asking questions, and together we'll get new insights. We create new knowledge from our conversations. And this is quite different from debate, where I've got my position, you've got your position, and we're going to batter each other out, and we might even take a vote on it. And actually the decision is carried by a vote rather than people going above and beyond their starting positions to create new understanding and new knowledge. And that takes a particular level of confidence and listening skills to be able to do well. So again, getting people with that skill set. And the idea about hiring people who are curious and have empathy. So this is going beyond the idea of hiring for competence. Now, I know from my own time in the public sector that there's a whole bunch of competence frameworks, and for all sorts of good reasons around fairness, etc., in terms of selection. But some of the really effective attributes that people have, in a sense, regardless of their competence, is their ability to be really influential human beings with other human beings. And yes, there are certain jobs that you need to hire for competence, obviously, brain surgeons, pilots, not the least, but in business, it's about how do we connect effectively across our boundaries. Enterprise projects is another way of connecting teams together. And in a sense, this is what you are probably doing already, although you may be doing it from a perspective of my silo or my function needs to get this, and it's less about the enterprise project and really still about my function, my team, my department. We were called in to do this piece of work for a multinational, and this was a team that was doing, or rather a division that was doing really well, but the global chief executive had put on them a really, really sporting target to basically double their EBIT in the space of 5 years. And the only way to achieve this was to get out into the world to meet other divisions and say, what great ideas have you got? How did you solve it? How can we bring this into our division? The idea of always doing what you've always done, you're always going to get what you've always got. And the goal that had been placed on them was so adventurous that they couldn't achieve it by incremental performance, by hiring another person, bringing in consultants or whatever. This was about a major push to learn from the global organization. So, and again, that brought all the things that we just discussed in terms of dialogue and bridges and glues. We had another recent example, and the reason I'm sharing this with you because it's something you can do without having to hire people like me, and I'm doing myself out of a job here, but some of this stuff is really simple. Yes, you need external facilitations to help you do it, but this particular company were very clear about their direction, and they got all the department heads into a room, an event, and basically said, this is the single unifying song sheet we have. Okay, this is where we're going, and these are the big steps we need to make. So it was very clear this was what's going on. One core objective, 3 focus areas, and really refreshingly to hear 3 things that we are going to say no to in the coming year. The functions then went away and then started to work out, well, that's the strategy. So what do we in operations need to do? Okay, so what do we need from technology? What do we need from finance? What are the behaviors that are going to support this interconnecting? What are our priorities? And basically they started negotiating with each of the teams along the room into another room. And they came out at the end of the day with essentially a bunch of contracts between the functions. And the feedback you can see there is that after 3 months, the level of collaboration, I don't know what metrics they were using, but they've used the word tenfold. But it really was a turning moment where each of the functions started to understand that they each had to serve one another or support one another. So that was a major shift. Very quickly, some ideas that you will all have perhaps done at some stage is think about a collaboration charter with your different parts of your organization. You may want to make it a bit more formal, have a customer supplier agreement. This is high level and quite relational. Or if you're in the fast moving consumer goods or in a manufacturing area, you might want to have service level agreements which are a bit more detailed and more metricized. But have some sort of written document that acts as a guide and a holding to account mechanism for that level of interlocking. Have a front door, so when tasks come into your team, how are you going to scope them? How are you going to prioritize them? Are you going to have a discussion with the people who want your service to say, well, actually, our higher priority is in the strategy, so we can't help you just now. Communication. How are you going to deal with change? How are you going to escalate issues that you can't agree on? And then back to Amy's work about bridges, carefully selecting team bridges that can go out and have those conversations with other teams. Couple of books. I'll put this on the video, which we'll send out. You can sort of the references for the books that you might want to have a look at. So what really is connect up, down, across, inside and out, but also into the future. Start thinking about succession plans, what's coming down the line 3, 6, 9 months ahead. You, as the team leader, you are thinking outwards and upwards. And invest in continuous nurture and team networking. It can be a distraction from the day job, but this is how you're going to increase the value that the organization sort of demands of you. And don't forget the gardener metaphor, okay? This is about growing, but also pruning when needed. And this is perhaps the harsh end of the deal. But if you go away and just remember the gardener, that will be fantastic. So that's it. That's the journey of 5 elements of team effectiveness. Do get in touch if you want to find out more about that. Um, but that's the 5 buckets that you want to pay attention to. Some bits will be more important to you right now or in the future than others, but this acts as an inventory of the things that you may want to pay attention to. And as I said the last time, we do all this stuff and we can offer it, but I just wanted to leave you with the idea that if you're going to do your own thing, there's quite a useful way of doing this. Rather than just having a single day workshop, you want to have a way of setting up, uh, creating expectations, creating understanding amongst the people you can be working with. So your teams have an online call, have some sort of assessment, um, do the workshop, um, do have some materials, have use the models that we've quoted, but don't stop there. There's something about going back into the workplace, which is where people learn the most effectively, and do this through workplace actions that they'll have discovered through the workshop, for example. And then have a follow-up. So holding to account. We always build a holding to account process into what we do, and it stops people having a workshop, going back to the workplace, nothing changes. And of course, they've had a lovely day out, but they've wasted a lot of money and time. So this is about holding people to account. And then finally, doing that several times, but equally elevating the support through CPD, for example, membership of a professional body where they can get access to more materials, etc. So that's just give you a process that you might want to take away and use with your own folks. And that's it. And 24 minutes, apologize, slight overrun. So really open to anybody for questions. Any problems we can perhaps solve as a group online, or any observations? Over to you.